Gate agent throws away black girl's passport, not knowing she is the airline CEO's daughter. This passport is fake. The gate agent's voice sliced through Gate 42 at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport like a serrated knife. She held the small blue booklet between two fingers as if it were contaminated, her face twisted with disgust as she glared at the 11-year-old black girl standing before her. "Where did you steal this from?" Naomi Chen-Williams felt her heart drop into her stomach. She stood there in her crisp navy blue and white uniform from Brighton Academy for Advanced Studies in Austin, Texas, her backpack decorated with math equation pins weighing heavily on her small shoulders. The National Mathematics Competition starts in Boston tomorrow morning. She'd been preparing for 6 months. Her carry-on held flashcards, her lucky calculator, and the presentation she'd practiced 100 times. "Ma'am, I didn't steal anything." Naomi's voice came out smaller than she wanted, shaking despite her efforts to sound confident. "That's my passport. My mom helped me apply for it last year." The gate agent, her name tag read Sharon Whitfield, laughed, sharp and cruel. "Your mom? An 11-year-old with a passport to international destinations? Flying alone in the middle of a school day?" She waved the passport dismissively. "This is clearly fraudulent. Probably stolen from a real traveler." Security. Passengers in the boarding line craned their necks to see what was causing the delay. Some pulled out phones, already recording. Others whispered to each other, their conversations a low buzz of judgment and speculation. A few looked uncomfortable but said nothing, eyes darting away when Naomi's gaze found theirs. "Please, ma'am," Naomi tried again, her voice breaking now. "I'm representing my school at the National Junior Math League Championship in Boston. My teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, can verify everything. The competition organizers sent my school the itinerary. I have all my documents in my backpack. I don't care about your fake story." Sharon's face had gone red now, her voice rising to a pitch that made people 3 gates away turn to look. "You're not boarding this aircraft with fraudulent documents. Do you know what kind of trouble I could get in for letting someone like you through? Someone like you." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Naomi felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She'd worked so hard for this. Top student in her grade. Only 6th grader ever selected for Brighton Academy's math competition team. She'd beaten 7th and 8th graders in the qualifying rounds. Her suitcase had the special Brighton Academy polo shirt they'd ordered just for her, with "Team Captain" embroidered under the school crest. "Ma'am, if you just scan the passport in your system." "I'm not scanning anything." Sharon cut her off. "This conversation is over." Then, in a motion so quick Naomi almost didn't process it, Sharon Whitfield walked to a nearby trash can and dropped the passport inside. Just threw it away like it was garbage. Like Naomi's entire identity, her ability to travel, her dreams of competing in Boston, all of it was worthless enough to toss in the trash. Naomi stood frozen, watching her passport disappear into a pile of coffee cups and crumpled napkins and boarding pass stubs. Around her, gasps rippled through the crowd. Even the people who'd been silent, who'd been looking away, couldn't ignore this. "You can't do that," someone shouted. But Sharon just crossed her arms, a satisfied smile on her face. "Problem solved. Next passenger, please." What Sharon Whitfield didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as she stood there basking in her small moment of power, was that the passport she'd just thrown away belonged to Naomi Chen-Williams, daughter of David Williams, CEO of American Airlines. And in exactly 3 minutes, her supervisor's phone was going to ring with a call that would end her career. Now let me ask you something that'll make you think. Have you ever watched an adult abuse their power against a child and wondered why nobody stopped them? Have you seen someone destroy a kid's dreams in real time and felt that sick feeling in your stomach, but didn't know what to do? If you think racism against children is just following protocol, if you believe staying silent keeps you safe, then this story isn't for you. But if you know in your soul that what Sharon just did to Naomi is the exact kind of evil that thrives when good people do nothing, then you need to watch until the very end. Drop in the comments where and when you've seen this kind of discrimination, against kids, against anyone. Hit that like button if you stand against racial profiling, share this video so the world sees what really happens at airport gates, and subscribe to Hyper Racism channel because what happens in the next 3 minutes will shock you. Sharon Whitfield has no idea whose daughter she just terrorized. And the reckoning is coming fast. Naomi Chen-Williams had circled October 12th on her bedroom calendar in bright purple marker 3 months ago. The National Junior Math League Championship. Boston, Massachusetts. A chance to compete against the brightest young mathematical minds in the country. She'd dreamed about it every night since Mrs. Rodriguez had called her name during the school assembly, announcing she'd scored the highest in the regional qualifiers. Naomi Chen-Williams, 6th grade, will be representing Brighton Academy for advanced studies as our youngest team captain in school history. The applause had been deafening. Her best friend Jessica had squeezed her hands so tight it hurt. Her parents, watching via live stream from work, had both cried. Her mother, Dr. Lily Chen, a pediatric oncologist at Dell Children's Medical Center, and her father, David Williams, who'd taken a break from back-to-back meetings at American Airlines headquarters to watch his baby girl's big moment. Brighton Academy, nestled in the heart of Austin's downtown district, was a prestigious STEM-focused charter school that drew students from across Texas. Getting accepted required test scores in the 98th percentile and a grueling interview process. Staying there required maintaining straight A's and demonstrating exceptional aptitude in mathematics or science. Naomi had both, a perfect 4.0 GPA and a mathematical mind that solved complex equations the way other kids solved puzzles. But being one of only 12 black students in a school of 300 meant Naomi had learned early to work twice as hard, to be twice as prepared, to never give anyone a reason to question whether she belonged. Her parents had prepared her for this reality with conversations that broke their hearts to have. Baby, some people will look at you and see your beautiful brown skin before they see your brilliant mind, her mother had told her when she was 8, after a substitute teacher had accused her of cheating on a test she'd aced. It's not fair. It's not right. But it's real. So you have to be undeniable. You have to be so good they can't ignore you. Naomi had taken that advice to heart. She studied when other kids played. She joined the math club, coding club, and robotics club. She entered every competition, won every award, collected achievements like armor against the doubt she saw in some teachers' eyes, some parents' faces, and some classmates' whispered comments. The passport had been her mother's idea. You're going to travel the world someday, baby. MIT, Stanford, maybe Cambridge in England. Let's get you ready now. They'd gone to the passport office together last summer, Naomi's application supported by her birth certificate, her school ID, and her mother's credentials. The official had smiled at her, asked about her dreams, and told her she was going to do great things. That passport represented a possibility. Freedom. A future without borders. And Sharon Whitfield had thrown it in the trash like it meant nothing. Now Naomi stood at gate 42, her world collapsing around her, trying to figure out what to do next. The trash can was right there, maybe 5 feet away. She could see the edge of her passport's blue cover peeking out from under a Starbucks cup. But Sharon stood between her and the trash can, arms crossed, blocking access like a sentinel guarding her terrible decision. I said next passenger. Sharon barked at the line behind Naomi. Move along, little girl. You're not flying today. But my competition, Naomi's voice cracked. It starts tomorrow morning. If I don't get on this flight, I'll miss it. My whole team is counting on me. I'm the captain. I can't just. Should have thought of that before you tried to travel with fake documents. Sharon's tone was final, dismissive. She'd already mentally moved on, already decided Naomi wasn't worth any more of her time. Behind Naomi, an older woman with kind eyes touched her shoulder gently. Sweetie, do you have a parent you can call? Someone who can help sort this out? Naomi nodded, pulling out her phone with trembling hands. She scrolled to Dad's contact, pressed call, and prayed he wasn't in one of his long meetings. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. Hey, Naomi Bear. Her father's warm voice filled her ear, and something inside her finally broke. Shouldn't you be boarding by now? Flight leaves in 20 minutes. Daddy, the word came out as a sob. Daddy, she threw away my passport. The gate agent said it was fake, and she threw it in the trash, and now I can't board, and I'm going to miss the competition and... Whoa, slow down, baby girl. Take a breath. David's voice had changed instantly, going from cheerful to laser-focused. Tell me exactly what happened. From the beginning. Through tears, Naomi explained. The accusation. The refusal to scan her passport. The trash can. Sharon's face twisted with satisfaction as she destroyed an 11-year-old's dreams. The line went quiet for a moment. Then her father's voice came back, and it was different now. Controlled. The voice he used in boardrooms when someone had made a very expensive mistake. Naomi, what gate are you at? Gate 42. Terminal C. And the agent's name? Sharon Whitfield. It's on her name tag. Okay, baby. Listen to me very carefully. I need you to stay exactly where you are. Don't leave that gate. Don't let anyone move you. I'm making some calls right now, and this is going to be handled. Do you understand? But Daddy, my passport is in the trash. I know. We'll get it back. And Naomi? His voice softened for just a moment. You didn't do anything wrong. Not one thing. What's happening to you is wrong, and it's going to be made right. I promise you that. He hung up, and Naomi stood there clutching her phone, surrounded by strangers who'd watched her humiliation, feeling smaller than she'd ever felt in her life. She was 11 years old, standing in an airport terminal in her school uniform, being treated like a criminal because a gate agent had looked at her brown skin and decided she couldn't possibly belong on an airplane. What Naomi didn't know was that her father had immediately conference called 3 people: the director of airport operations for DFW, the head of customer service for American Airlines, and his chief legal counsel. What she didn't know was that Sharon Whitfield's employment file was being pulled up on screens in 3 different offices simultaneously. What she didn't know was that security footage from Gate 42 was being flagged and preserved as evidence. And what Sharon Whitfield definitely didn't know was that the little black girl she'd just thrown a passport away from wasn't just any passenger. She was the daughter of the man who could end Sharon's career with a single phone call. Sharon continued processing passengers, checking boarding passes, scanning tickets, completely oblivious to the storm gathering around her. She'd done this before, made assumptions about passengers of color, questioned their documents more aggressively, treated them with suspicion that white passengers never faced. She'd received 2 written warnings in her 15-year career, both for customer service issues, that HR had vaguely described without addressing the racial pattern underneath. But those warnings had been filed away, forgotten, because Sharon always apologized just enough to avoid real consequences. Because the passengers she'd mistreated didn't have power, didn't have connections, didn't have the resources to fight back against a system designed to protect employees over customers. This time was different. This time, the little girl trembling at her gate, tears streaming down her face as she clutched her Brighton Academy backpack, had a father who ran the airline. And in exactly 2 minutes, Sharon's supervisor was going to get a call that would turn her world upside down. Naomi wiped her tears with the sleeve of her Brighton Academy blazer, trying to compose herself the way her parents had always taught her. When people are unfair, you stay calm, her mother always said. You don't give them ammunition to call you aggressive or difficult. You remain poised even when they're trying to break you. So Naomi took a deep breath and approached Sharon again, her voice steadier this time despite the fear churning in her stomach. Ma'am, my father is coming. He's going to help straighten this out. Can I please just retrieve my passport from the trash while we wait? Sharon turned slowly, her eyes narrowing at Naomi's persistence. I told you to move along. Are you hard of hearing? Or do you just not understand English? The racist implication hung in the air like smoke. Several passengers gasped. The woman who'd touched Naomi's shoulder earlier stepped forward. That's completely inappropriate. She's a child, and she's asking a reasonable question. Ma'am, I need you to step back or you'll be denied boarding as well, Sharon snapped, her authority challenged, her defensiveness rising. She turned back to Naomi. Look, little girl, I don't know what scam you're running or who put you up to this, but you're not getting on my flight. End of discussion. It's not your flight, Naomi said quietly, surprising herself with her own boldness. You're just the gate agent. And that passport in the trash is mine. It has my name, my photo, my information. If you just scan it into your system, are you telling me how to do my job? Sharon's voice rose dangerously. You think an 11-year-old knows more about airport security than I do? I've been working for American Airlines for 15 years. 15 years. And in that time, I've stopped countless people trying to travel with fraudulent documents. But mine isn't fraudulent. Enough. Sharon slammed her hand on the counter, making Naomi flinch. The crack echoed through the gate area, and more passengers turned to watch. Phones appeared everywhere now, recording, documenting, bearing witness. I'm calling security to have you removed from this terminal. You're disrupting operations, you're refusing to comply with airline personnel, and you're creating a disturbance. Naomi's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Removed from the terminal. She'd never been in trouble in her life. Never gotten a detention, never been sent to the principal's office, never even been late to class. And now this woman was threatening to have her dragged away by security like she was a criminal. Please, Naomi's voice broke again, tears spilling over despite her best efforts. Please, I just want to compete. I worked so hard. My team needs me. Why are you doing this? What did I do wrong? For just a moment, something flickered across Sharon's face. Uncertainty, maybe. A glimpse of recognition that she might be wrong, that she might be destroying an innocent child's dreams based on nothing but prejudice. But then the moment passed, and her expression hardened again. You should have stayed in school where you belong, Sharon said coldly. Girls like you don't need to be gallivanting across the country pretending to be something you're not. The cruelty of it, the deliberate, calculated cruelty, hit Naomi like a physical blow. Girls like you. The same words racists had been using for generations to put black children in their place. To suggest that ambition, excellence, and achievement weren't meant for kids who looked like her. The kind woman behind Naomi had her phone out now. I'm recording all of this. Every word. You're going to lose your job for this. Record whatever you want, Sharon shot back. I'm protecting this airline from fraud. That's my job. If you have a problem with that, you can file a complaint. Oh, I will, the woman promised. We all will. But Sharon just smirked, confident in her authority, certain that complaints disappeared into corporate bureaucracy and never resulted in real consequences. She'd seen it happen before. Passengers got angry, wrote scathing emails, and maybe got a flight voucher as an apology. But the system protected her. HR protected her. The union protected her. What Sharon didn't know was that protection was evaporating by the second. At American Airlines headquarters in Fort Worth, just 23 miles from DFW Airport, David Williams' executive assistant was already coordinating a response that moved with military precision. David's call had set off a chain reaction that rippled through multiple departments simultaneously. In airport operations, Director James Martinez pulled up the live security feed from Gate 42. He watched Sharon Whitfield throw a passport in the trash. Watched her refuse to retrieve it. Watched her escalate against an 11-year-old girl who was clearly terrified. His jaw tightened. Get me Terminal Supervisor Chen at DFW. Now. In customer service, VP Rebecca Torres was already reviewing Sharon Whitfield's employee file, her expression growing grimmer with each page. 2 written warnings for customer interaction issues. For complaints from passengers of color, all describing similar treatment, aggressive questioning, excessive scrutiny, thinly veiled accusations. And in the notes section, a pattern of HR closing these complaints with minimal investigation. How did this employee stay in a customer-facing role with this record? Rebecca asked her team. The answer was uncomfortable but obvious, because the complaints came from passengers without power, and Sharon knew how to apologize just enough to avoid serious consequences. In legal, Chief Counsel Patricia Wong was already drafting documentation. False accusations against a minor. Destruction of valid travel documents. Violation of American Airlines customer service protocols. Discrimination based on race. The list grew with every passing minute. Back at Gate 42, Naomi checked her phone. Her father had texted, 2 more minutes, baby. Hold on. But Sharon was on her radio now, calling for security, her patience completely gone. This is Gate 42, Terminal C. I need security for a disruptive passenger refusing to leave the gate area. I'm not being disruptive. Naomi protested, her voice cracking with desperation. I'm just standing here. I'm waiting for my dad. Well, your dad can come find you at the security office, Sharon said with air quotes around the word dad, as if she didn't believe Naomi even had a father. The racist stereotype, black children from broken homes, absent fathers, was so ingrained in Sharon's worldview that she couldn't imagine this well-spoken, uniformed girl had a stable family. 2 security officers appeared, their expressions uncertain as they took in the scene. A tiny 11-year-old in a school uniform, tears streaming down her face, surrounded by angry passengers with phones out recording. Ma'am, what seems to be the problem? The older officer, whose name tag read Officer Rodriguez, asked Sharon. This child attempted to board with fraudulent documents. I confiscated the passport, and now she's refusing to leave and disrupting operations. You threw my passport in the trash. Naomi turned to the officers, desperate for someone to listen. It's not fraudulent. It's real. It has my name and picture and everything. She wouldn't even scan it. She just looked at me and decided I was lying. Officer Rodriguez glanced at the trash can, then at Sharon. Ma'am, did you actually verify the passport was fraudulent before disposing of it? Sharon's face flushed red. I didn't need to scan it. It was obviously fake. How was it obvious? Because Sharon stopped, realizing she was about to say something she couldn't walk back. Because a black 11-year-old with a passport didn't fit her narrow worldview. Because she'd made an assumption based on skin color and nothing else. I'd like to see the passport, Officer Rodriguez said firmly. It's in the trash. She can dig it out herself if she wants it so bad. The officer's expression hardened. He walked to the trash can, pulled out Naomi's passport, and brushed off the coffee residue. He opened it, examined the photo page, then pulled out a handheld scanner from his belt. He scanned the passport. The machine beeped. Green light. This passport is valid, Officer Rodriguez said quietly. Issued by the U.S. Department of State. Belongs to Naomi Chen-Williams, age 11, resident of Austin, Texas. He looked at Sharon, and his disappointment was palpable. This passport is completely legitimate. The blood drained from Sharon's face. That's impossible. Let me see that scanner. Step back, ma'am. Officer Rodriguez handed the passport to Naomi, whose hands shook as she took it. Miss, I apologize for what you've experienced. This should never have happened. Sharon was sputtering now, her confidence crumbling. But this is a mistake. The only mistake, a new voice cut through the chaos, deep and authoritative, was mine for not addressing your pattern of discrimination sooner. Everyone turned. Walking toward Gate 42 was Terminal Supervisor Michael Chen, flanked by 2 more security officers. His face was grave, his stride purposeful. Behind him, moving even faster, was someone else. Someone in an impeccable suit, someone whose presence made passengers instinctively step aside, someone Sharon Whitfield had never met in person but whose photo she'd seen in company emails and quarterly reports. David Williams, CEO of American Airlines, had arrived. And the look on his face promised that Sharon's 15-year career was about to end in the next 5 minutes. Have you ever watched someone double down on their racism even when confronted with evidence they're wrong? Seen an adult refuse to admit they've harmed a child because that admission would mean facing their own prejudice? Sharon Whitfield had every opportunity to make this right, to scan the passport, to apologize, to show even a shred of human decency. Instead, she escalated. But because admitting Naomi belonged there would mean admitting her own racist assumptions were wrong. And for people like Sharon, protecting their ego is more important than protecting a child's dignity. Daddy! Naomi's voice broke through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. She ran toward David Williams, and he caught her in his arms, lifting her off the ground despite his perfectly pressed suit, despite the 50 people watching, despite the gravity of the situation unfolding around them. I've got you, baby girl, David whispered into her hair, feeling her small body shake with sobs she'd been holding back. "I've got you now." Sharon Whitfield stood frozen at the gate counter, her face cycling through emotions faster than she could process them. Confusion, recognition, horror. She looked at Naomi, then at David Williams, then at the growing crowd of airline personnel converging on Gate 42, and the pieces finally clicked together. Mr. Williams, Terminal Supervisor Michael Chen arrived, slightly out of breath. "Sir, I came as soon as operations called. I've reviewed the security footage and..." He stopped, seeing Naomi in David's arms, her school uniform wrinkled, her face streaked with tears. His expression shifted from professional concern to personal anger. "Is this your daughter?" "This is Naomi," David said, setting her down but keeping one hand on her shoulder. "My youngest. 11 years old. Straight A student at Brighton Academy. Team captain for the National Junior Math League Championship." He looked directly at Sharon, and his voice went cold. "And the child your gate agent just terrorized, accused of fraud, and literally threw a passport away from." Michael Chen turned to Sharon, and the disappointment in his eyes was devastating. "Ms. Whitfield, is this true?" Sharon's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I didn't know. She didn't tell me." "She didn't tell you she was the CEO's daughter?" David's voice was quiet, dangerously controlled. "So you only treat children with respect if you know their parents have power? That's your defense?" "No, that's not what I meant." Sharon's voice rose, panic setting in. The passport looked suspicious. The passport that Officer Rodriguez just scanned and confirmed was legitimate?" David gestured to the officer, who was still standing nearby with the passport in his hand. "That passport. I thought I was trying to protect." "You thought what exactly?" David took a step closer, and Sharon instinctively backed up against her counter. "You looked at my 11-year-old daughter in her school uniform, with her math competition materials, with her boarding pass and valid passport, and you decided she was a criminal. But what specifically made you jump to that conclusion?" The question hung in the air like a noose. Everyone knew the answer. Everyone in that gate area, everyone watching the security footage from operations, everyone who would eventually see the passenger videos, they all knew exactly why Sharon had assumed the worst. Because Naomi was black. That was the only reason. The only explanation that fits Sharon's immediate accusation, her refusal to verify, and her willingness to destroy a child's documents and dreams without a second thought. "Answer him," Michael Chen said firmly. "What made you think her passport was fraudulent?" She was young and traveling alone, and Sharon was grasping at straws now, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "Unaccompanied minors fly every single day," David interrupted. "We have entire protocols for it. So try again. What made you think my daughter's passport was fake?" Sharon's silence was damning. The woman who'd been recording stepped forward, her phone still out. "I'll tell you what she said. She said, someone like you didn't belong in airports. She made comments about whether this child understood English. She threw a valid government document in the trash rather than spend 30 seconds scanning it. And when this little girl, this terrified, crying child, begged for her passport back, this woman called security to have her removed. Other passengers chimed in now, the dam broken. She was incredibly aggressive with that baby. She wouldn't let anyone help. Wouldn't let the child explain. I've been flying for 40 years, and I've never seen a gate agent treat someone so cruelly." David listened to each testimony, his jaw tightening with every word. He looked down at Naomi, who was clinging to his side, and saw something that made his heart shatter. His confident, brilliant daughter looked small. Diminished. Like something essential had been stripped away from her in the last 30 minutes. "Naomi," he said gently, crouching down to her eye level. "I need to handle some business with Ms. Whitfield. Can you sit with Officer Rodriguez for a few minutes?" "Don't leave me," Naomi whispered, her fingers clutching his jacket. "I'm not leaving. I'm staying right here. I just need you to sit down for a minute while Daddy takes care of this." "Okay." Reluctantly, Naomi let Officer Rodriguez guide her to a seat. The kind woman who'd been defending her sat beside her, putting a comforting arm around her shoulders. David stood back up, and the full weight of his authority settled over Gate 42 like a heavy blanket. Ms. Whitfield, you're terminated effective immediately. Sharon's face went white. You can't. I have rights. I have a union. You have rights, and the union will represent you if you choose to appeal. But right now, you're done working for American Airlines. David turned to Michael Chen. Get her off the floor. Security escort. Badge and credentials confiscated. She doesn't interact with another passenger. Sir, please. Sharon's voice cracked. I made a mistake. I'll apologize. Please, I need this job. I have a mortgage, I have bills. You should have thought of that before you traumatized a child. David's voice was steel. Before you threw her passport in the trash. Before you called her a liar and a fraud. Before you decided that a black 11-year-old in a school uniform couldn't possibly belong on an airplane. I'm not racist. Sharon practically shouted it, desperation making her voice shrill. I have black friends. I voted for Obama. This isn't about race. Then what is it about? David demanded. Explain to me how you looked at my daughter, polite, articulate, with valid documents and a school uniform, and immediately assumed criminal activity. Explain how a white child in the same situation would have received the same treatment. Because I've been in this industry for 23 years, and I've seen the data. I know exactly how passengers of color are treated compared to white passengers. So tell me this wasn't about race. Convince me. Sharon couldn't. Her mouth moved, but no words came out that could justify what she'd done. Rebecca Torres from customer service had arrived now, tablet in hand, her expression grim. Mr. Williams, I've pulled Ms. Whitfield's complete file. This is her third incident involving discriminatory treatment of passengers of color. The previous two were closed with written warnings and mandatory diversity training. Which clearly didn't work, David said bitterly. He turned to Rebecca. How many other employees have similar patterns? Rebecca hesitated. Across our entire network? We're not sure. The complaint system is decentralized, so patterns don't always emerge unless someone with power demands to see them. David finished her sentence, understanding flooding through him. How many NAMs have there been? How many black children, black adults, black families have been treated this way by my employees, and we paid them off with flight vouchers and apologies while the gate agents faced no real consequences? The question hung heavy in the air. Rebecca looked down at her tablet, unable to meet his eyes. Too many, sir. David closed his eyes for a moment, processing that truth. He'd built his career on being a good leader, on running an ethical company, on believing that the systems were working. But the systems had failed his own daughter. And if they'd failed Naomi, who had every advantage, every protection, every resource, how many others had they failed? He opened his eyes and looked at the crowd of employees and passengers gathered around Gate 42. I want everyone here to understand something. What happened to my daughter today was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a much larger problem. A problem that exists because we've allowed it to exist. Because we've treated discrimination as a customer service issue instead of the civil rights violation it actually is. He turned back to Sharon, who was crying now, mascara running down her face. Ms. Whitfield, you didn't just hurt my daughter today. You exposed a rot in this organization that I'm going to spend every resource at my disposal eliminating. So no, I don't accept your apology. I don't care about your mortgage. And I don't care that you voted for Obama. What I care about is that you saw a black child and immediately assumed criminality. And that is something I will not tolerate in any employee at any level of this company. Security had arrived to escort Sharon away. As they led her from the gate, she turned back one last time. Please, Mr. Williams. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything. You're done, David said flatly. And Ms. Whitfield? I'm going to make sure every airline in this industry knows exactly why you were terminated. You won't work in aviation again. Sharon's sobs echoed down the terminal as security led her away. The passengers who'd witnessed everything began to applaud, slowly at first, then building to thunderous approval. But David didn't feel victorious. He felt sick. He walked back to Naomi, who was still sitting with Officer Rodriguez and the kind woman. He knelt in front of his daughter, taking her small hands in his. "Baby girl, I am so sorry this happened to you. It's not your fault, Daddy." "Yes, it is," David said, his own voice breaking now. "It's my job to make sure my employees treat people right. It's my job to create a culture where this can't happen. And I failed. I failed you and every other passenger of color who's experienced this." Naomi threw her arms around his neck, and they held each other while dozens of strangers watched, many with tears in their own eyes, recognizing the pain of a father who couldn't protect his child from the world's ugliness. Michael Chen approached respectfully. "Sir, Flight 2847 to Boston is still boarding. We can get Naomi on it, but we need to move quickly." David pulled back, looking at his daughter. "Do you still want to go, sweetheart? After everything that just happened, I'll understand if you want to go home." Naomi wiped her eyes, and David saw something remarkable in her expression. Not defeat. Determination. "I'm going," she said firmly. "I worked too hard to let her stop me. My team is counting on me. And if I don't go, then she wins. She gets to take away my dreams. I'm not giving her that." Pride flooded through David's chest, overwhelming and fierce. "That's my girl." They walked together to the gate, David carrying her backpack, Naomi holding her rescued passport. The passengers waiting to board moved aside, creating a path, many touching Naomi's shoulder or offering words of encouragement as she passed. "You're going to be amazing in Boston, sweetheart. Show them what you're made of. We're all rooting for you." At the boarding door, David hugged his daughter one more time. "Call me the second you land. And Naomi? Whatever happens at that competition, you've already shown more courage today than most adults show in a lifetime. I love you, Daddy. I love you more, baby girl. Now go win that championship." David watched his daughter walk down the jetway, her small figure in the Brighton Academy uniform looking both vulnerable and invincible. As the jetway door closed behind her, he pulled out his phone. He had calls to make, policies to rewrite, a company culture to transform. Because Sharon Whitfield was gone, but the problem she represented wasn't. And David Williams was about to make sure that no other child, his or anyone else's, ever experienced what Naomi had endured today. But even as Flight 2847 pushed back from the gate, even as justice had seemingly been served, one question remained. What would David discover when he dug deeper into the complaint system? How many more Sharon Whitfields were out there, still working, still discriminating, still protected by a system that valued profit over people? The answer would shake American Airlines to its foundation. David Williams stood at Gate 42 long after Naomi's flight had taken off, his phone pressed to his ear as he listened to Rebecca Torres walk him through the preliminary audit results. What she was telling him made his blood run cold. "Sir, in the last 18 months alone, we've had 47 complaints filed against gate agents and flight attendants involving racial profiling. 47. And of those, only 3 resulted in termination. The rest were handled with warnings, mandatory training, or in some cases, just a note in the file." "Send me everything," David said, his voice tight. "Every complaint. Every resolution. Every employee with multiple incidents. I want it on my desk by tomorrow morning." As he ended the call, his phone buzzed with a text from Lily, Naomi's mother. "Just talk to her. She's trying to be brave, but I can hear it in her voice. She's scared, David. Our baby is scared to exist in the world." David sat down heavily in one of the gate chairs, the weight of that text crushing him. He'd spent Naomi's entire life trying to shield her from racism, knowing it was impossible but trying anyway. Private school. Safe neighborhood. Every advantage money could buy. And still, a gate agent had looked at his brilliant daughter and seen a threat. His phone rang again. This time it was his executive assistant. "Sir, you need to know," Sharon Whitfield just posted on Facebook. "She's claiming she was fired for doing her job and that you abused your power to protect your daughter's illegal activity. It's already being shared in airline employee groups." David closed his eyes, exhaustion and fury warring inside him. "Screenshot everything. Send it to legal. She just opened herself up to a defamation lawsuit." "There's more, sir. A conservative news outlet has picked up her story. They're framing it as corporate overreach, as a wealthy CEO using his position to avoid security protocols. They're calling you the villain. Of course they are, David said bitterly. Because that's how it always worked. A black man exercising authority became aggressive. A father protecting his child became an abuse of power. The narrative flipped so quickly, rewriting Sharon from perpetrator to victim, transforming racism into legitimate security concerns. Sir, there's a reporter from that outlet outside headquarters right now, demanding a statement. What do you want me to tell them? David stood up, straightening his tie, his resolve hardening into something unbreakable. Tell them I'll give them a statement. Tomorrow morning. Press conference. And Rebecca? Make sure every major outlet is invited. If Sharon Whitfield wants to make this public, then let's make it very public. Are you sure, sir? Once you go public with your daughter's identity. I'm sure, David interrupted. Because right now, the story is about me abusing power. Tomorrow, the story is going to be about a system that's been failing black passengers for years. And I'm going to make damn sure everyone hears it. He hung up and looked at the empty gate where his daughter had stood crying 30 minutes ago. Sharon Whitfield thought she could control the narrative, thought she could paint herself as the victim, thought the system would protect her the way it always had. She had no idea what was coming. But neither did David. Because when he finally saw the full scope of complaints buried in American Airlines system, when he discovered just how deep the rot went, he would face a choice. Protect the company's reputation or expose the truth and watch everything burn. The next morning, David Williams stood at a podium in American Airlines' main conference room, facing 37 journalists, 12 cameras, and a live stream audience that was growing by the second. Behind him, projected on a massive screen, was a single image, Naomi's school photo from Brighton Academy, her smile bright and hopeful, her eyes full of dreams. That's my daughter, David began, his voice steady but weighted with emotion. Naomi Chen-Williams. 11 years old. Honor roll student. Math team captain. And yesterday, one of my employees threw her passport in the trash and accused her of fraud because she's black. The room erupted with questions, cameras flashing, but David raised his hand for silence. I'm not here to talk about one gate agent's racism. I'm here to talk about the system that protected her racism for 15 years. He nodded to his assistant, who began displaying documents on the screen behind him. Sharon Whitfield had 17 complaints filed against her during her tenure with American Airlines. 17 times, passengers reported discriminatory treatment. And 17 times, our company handled it with apologies, vouchers, and minimal consequences for the employee involved. The documents scrolled, complaint after complaint, all following the same pattern. Black passengers were questioned more aggressively. Latino families are subjected to additional screening. Asian travelers were asked to prove their tickets were legitimate. And always, the company chose to protect the employee over the passenger. But Sharon Whitfield isn't the problem, David continued, his voice growing harder. She's a symptom. In the last 18 months, American Airlines received 47 formal discrimination complaints. 47. And we terminated exactly 3 employees. 3 out of 47. The rest? Written warnings. Mandatory training that clearly doesn't work. Or just notes in files that nobody ever looks at. A reporter from the Washington Post raised her hand. Mr. Williams, some are saying you only took action because this involved your daughter. That other passengers experiencing the same discrimination received vastly different responses. How do you answer that? David's jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled. They're absolutely right. My daughter got immediate action because I have power. Because I could ground a plane, terminate an employee, and demand accountability in real time. And that is exactly the problem. Justice shouldn't depend on whether your father runs the airline. Every single passenger who filed those 47 complaints deserved the same swift response my daughter received. And they didn't get it because the system is broken. Because we've been prioritizing employee retention and avoiding lawsuits over protecting passengers from discrimination. He paused, letting that sink in. So yes, I used my power yesterday. And I'm using it again today. Effective immediately, American Airlines is implementing a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. One verified incident, and you're gone. No warnings. No second chances. We're also creating an independent review board with civil rights experts to evaluate every discrimination complaint. And we're reaching out to every passenger who filed a complaint in the last 5 years to offer formal apologies and compensation. Another reporter shouted a question. What about Sharon Whitfield's claims that she was just following security protocols? David's expression hardened. Ms. Whitfield threw a valid U.S. passport in the trash without scanning it. She refused to verify its authenticity even when asked repeatedly. She called security to remove an 11-year-old child for the crime of asking for her property back. Those aren't security protocols. That's racism with a badge. The screen behind him changed again, this time showing security footage from Gate 42. The room went silent as they watched Sharon throw Naomi's passport away, watched her refuse to retrieve it, watched Naomi crying and begging. Several journalists were visibly emotional as the footage continued, capturing every cruel word, every dismissive gesture. When the video ended, David spoke again, his voice rough with emotion he could no longer fully contain. My daughter called me from that gate, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. She thought her dreams were over. She thought she'd done something wrong. And I had to explain to my 11-year-old that she hadn't, that the world is just cruel sometimes to people who look like her. That's a conversation no parent should have to have. That's a reality no child should have to live. He looked directly into the cameras, knowing Naomi was watching this from Boston, knowing she needed to hear what came next. But I'm done accepting that reality. I'm done treating discrimination as inevitable. And I'm done protecting employees who treat my passengers, any passengers, with cruelty and prejudice. The press conference continued for another hour, but the damage to Sharon Whitfield's narrative was complete. Her Facebook post claiming victimhood looked absurd next to the security footage. Her supporters in the employee groups went quiet as more evidence emerged. The conservative outlet that had tried to frame David as the villain quietly pulled its story. By evening, Sharon's lawyer had called David's office requesting to settle quietly. Sharon herself had disappeared from social media entirely, her posts deleted, her accounts private. But David wasn't interested in quiet settlements anymore. He'd spent too many years letting the system protect perpetrators while victims suffered in silence. Sharon Whitfield had exposed something David could no longer ignore. And now, whether his board liked it or not, American Airlines was about to become the first major airline to truly confront its discrimination problem head-on. The question was, would the rest of the industry follow, or would David's honesty make American Airlines a target while competitors continued to bury their own ugly truths? 3 days after the press conference, Naomi stood on stage at the Heinz Convention Center in Boston, holding a trophy almost as big as she was. Brighton Academy had won the National Junior Math League Championship, and Naomi had scored the highest individual performance in the competition's history. David watched from the audience via live stream, tears streaming down his face as his daughter, his brave, brilliant daughter, gave her acceptance speech. I almost didn't make it here, Naomi said into the microphone, her voice steady despite the 1,000 people watching. 3 days ago, a gate agent threw away my passport and told me I didn't belong on an airplane. She made me feel small and scared and like maybe I really didn't deserve to be here. The audience went silent, recognizing the story that had dominated news cycles all week. But my dad taught me something important. He taught me that when people try to make you small, you respond by being undeniable. By being so excellent, so prepared, so brilliant that they have no choice but to see you. She held up her trophy. This is for every black kid who's been told they don't belong somewhere. We belong everywhere. And we're not going anywhere. The standing ovation was thunderous. Back in Dallas, Sharon Whitfield's life had collapsed entirely. Terminated from American Airlines with cause, blacklisted from the aviation industry, she'd become a national symbol of workplace racism. Her name trended alongside hashtags about discrimination and accountability. 3 attorneys had declined to represent her lawsuit against David, citing the overwhelming video evidence against her claims. But more importantly, her exposure had triggered something bigger. United Airlines announced similar policy changes within 48 hours of David's press conference. Delta followed. Southwest. Within a week, every major U.S. airline had committed to independent discrimination reviews and zero-tolerance enforcement. The passengers who'd filed those 47 complaints started receiving calls from American Airlines, not with vouchers and boilerplate apologies, but with real accountability. Personal apologies from David himself. Compensation. And most importantly, confirmation that their complaints had mattered, that they'd been heard, that the employees who'd mistreated them faced consequences. One woman, who'd been racially profiled 2 years earlier and paid off with a $200 voucher, posted her response to David's call. "I'm crying. For 2 years, I thought I didn't matter. That my experience didn't count. Mr. Williams just spent 20 minutes apologizing to me, telling me I was right, that the employee was wrong, that he was sorry his company failed me. That's justice. That's what accountability looks like." Her post went viral, shared by thousands of people who'd experienced similar discrimination and never received acknowledgement, never received an apology, never received justice. David's phone buzzed with a text from Naomi. "Dad, they want me to do interviews about what happened. Should I?" David typed back, "Only if you want to, baby girl. You don't owe anyone your story. But if you choose to share it, I'll support you completely." Naomi's response came 30 seconds later. "I want to. If it helps other kids, I want to talk about it." And in that moment, David realized his daughter had learned something he'd spent his whole life understanding, that silence protects oppressors, and speaking truth, no matter how painful, was how you change the world. Have you ever had your humanity questioned by someone in a position of power? Ever been made to feel like you don't belong in a space you've earned the right to occupy? Naomi's story ended with justice, but how many similar stories end in silence, with victims too afraid or too powerless to speak up? What would you do if you witnessed what happened to Naomi? Would you record it, or would you intervene? 2 weeks after the championship, the Williams family sat together in their living room in Austin's Tarrytown neighborhood. Naomi had done 4 interviews, CNN, Good Morning America, NPR, and a special feature for Teen Vogue. Each time, she told her story with increasing confidence, transforming from a traumatized 11-year-old into a poised advocate for change. But tonight, after the cameras were off and the reporters had gone home, Lily noticed her daughter had grown quiet, withdrawn in a way that worried her. "Baby, talk to me," Lily said, sitting beside Naomi on the couch. "What's going on in that brilliant head of yours?" Naomi was quiet for a long moment, staring at her championship trophy on the mantel. "Mom, do you think it mattered? All the interviews, all the policy changes, all of it. Do you think anything really changed?" David looked up from his laptop, where he'd been reviewing the latest discrimination complaint data. The question hit him hard because he'd been asking himself the same thing. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "Because yesterday, I was at Target with Jessica and her mom. And this security guard followed us around the whole store. Not Jessica, she's white. Just me. Following me like I was going to steal something. And Jessica's mom finally asked him why, and he said he was just doing his job." Naomi's voice cracked. "I'm 11. I was literally holding a shopping basket with school supplies. And he still saw a threat. So what was the point? Sharon Whitfield got fired, but there's still a million Sharon Whitfields out there, and they're not going anywhere." Lily pulled Naomi close, her own eyes filling with tears. This was the conversation she'd hoped they could delay for a few more years, the realization that her daughter was now fully aware of how the world saw her, and that awareness was a burden she'd carry forever. "You want to know the truth?" David said, closing his laptop and moving to sit on Naomi's other side. "You're right. Firing Sharon didn't end racism. The policy changes didn't erase centuries of prejudice. And yes, there are still people who will look at you and see a threat instead of a brilliant young woman." "Then what was the point?" Naomi asked, tears streaming down her face now. "Why did I do all those interviews? Why did we make it so public if nothing actually changed?" "Because change doesn't happen all at once, baby girl. It happens in layers. In increments." David took her hand. "Before your story, American Airlines had 47 discrimination complaints and took real action on 3. Now we've taken action on 44. That's 44 employees who can't harm anyone else. That's not nothing. But it's not enough. You're right. It's not enough. It'll never be enough until every Sharon Whitfield, every racist security guard, every person who judges you by your skin color either changes or faces consequences. But here's what did change. Silence became unacceptable. Lily nodded, squeezing Naomi's shoulder. Before you spoke up, baby, those other 44 complaints were gathering dust in some HR database. Nobody was looking at the pattern. Nobody was connecting the dots. Your voice, your willingness to be public about what happened, forced people to look at what they'd been ignoring. And it's spreading, David added, pulling up his laptop again to show Naomi something. Look at this. Since your story went viral, discrimination complaints across all major airlines are up 300%. Not because discrimination increased, but because people finally feel safe reporting it. Because they saw you get justice and thought maybe, just maybe, they could too. He scrolled through messages that had poured into his office over the last 2 weeks. Passengers sharing their stories. Flight attendants reporting colleagues they'd been too afraid to call out before. Gate agents are asking for better training because they don't want to be the next Sharon Whitfield. This woman, David pointed to one message, was racially profiled on a United flight 6 months ago. She never reported it because she thought nothing would happen. After seeing your story, she filed a formal complaint. United investigated, found the flight attendant had a pattern of similar behavior, and terminated them. That happened because of you. There's more, Lily said gently. Your math teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, told me 3 other students have come forward about experiencing racism at Brighton Academy. Things they'd been silent about because they thought nobody would believe them or care. They found their voices because you found yours. Naomi wiped her eyes, processing this information. So it's like I can't change everything, but I changed something? You changed something significant, David confirmed. You took your pain and transformed it into power. You refused to let your trauma be meaningless. And yes, there are still racist security guards and biased teachers and people who will judge you unfairly. But there are also more people willing to speak up now. More systems are being examined. More accountability than existed 2 weeks ago. Your generation is going to finish what mine couldn't, Lily said, her voice thick with emotion. Every time you speak up, every time you refuse to accept discrimination as normal, every time you demand better, you're laying groundwork. Building momentum. Creating a world where maybe your children won't have to have these conversations. Naomi was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the Target security guard, about Sharon Whitfield, about all the people who'd look at her and see something to fear rather than someone to celebrate. The weight of it felt crushing sometimes, knowing that she'd have to be twice as good, twice as prepared, twice as careful for the rest of her life. But she also thought about the messages she'd received. The little black girl who'd written to say Naomi inspired her to join her school's math team. The teenager who'd reported a racist teacher after years of silence. The mother who'd shown her daughter Naomi's interviews and said, "See? Your voice matters. Your experiences matter. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." I think, Naomi said slowly, I think I get it now. It's not about fixing everything. It's about fixing what I can, when I can, with what I have. And trusting that other people will do the same until, eventually, all those small fixes add up to something big. David kissed the top of her head, pride overwhelming him. That's exactly right, baby girl. That's exactly right. Later that night, after Naomi had gone to bed, David sat with Lily on their back porch, watching the Austin skyline twinkle in the distance. She's going to carry this forever, isn't she? Lily said quietly. The knowledge that the world sees her as a threat. The hypervigilance. The exhaustion of always having to prove her worth. Yes, David said honestly because there was no point in lying about it. She's going to carry it. Just like we carried it. Just like our parents carried it. I hate that for her. Me too. David took Lily's hand. But you know what I don't hate? That she's not carrying it alone. That she has a platform, a voice, and parents with resources to fight back. That she got to see justice happen in real time instead of being told to just accept it. That's more than most black kids get. It's still not fair. No, it's not. But maybe if enough kids like Naomi speak up, if enough people like us use whatever power we have to demand accountability, if enough bystanders choose to intervene instead of record, maybe the kids who come after her won't have to carry it as heavy. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. You really think we can change things? Really? David thought about Sharon Whitfield, unemployed and infamous. About the 44 employees who'd faced consequences for discrimination. They thought they'd gotten away with it. About the 300% increase in reports, which meant 300% more people were brave enough to speak up. About policy changes rippling across an entire industry because one little girl's father refused to let her suffering be meaningless. I think we already are, he said. Slowly. Painfully. But yes, we are. And somewhere in her bedroom, Naomi was writing in her journal, processing everything that had happened, trying to make sense of a world that could be simultaneously cruel and kind, unjust and correctable. She wrote, "Today I learned that changing the world doesn't mean fixing everything at once. It means fixing what you can, where you are, with what you have. And trusting that your courage will inspire someone else's courage, and their courage will inspire someone else's, until eventually there's enough courage to actually move mountains. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a voice. And I'm going to use it." That journal entry would eventually become her college application essay 4 years later. The essay that would get her into MIT, where she'd study data science and develop algorithms to detect patterns of discrimination in corporate complaint systems. Where she'd create tools that could identify the next Sharon Whitfield before they harmed dozens of people. But that night, she was just an 11-year-old girl trying to understand why the world was so hard, and how she could help make it better. And in that trying, in that questioning, in that refusal to accept injustice as inevitable, she was already making it better. One voice at a time. One story at a time. One act of courage at a time. That was how you changed the world. Not with one dramatic moment, but with persistent, unflinching truth-telling that refused to let darkness hide in silence anymore. 6 months after Gate 42, Naomi Chen-Williams stood in front of her 6th grade class at Brighton Academy, presenting her final social studies project. The assignment was to research a social justice issue and propose solutions. Most students had chosen topics from history books, the civil rights movement, women's suffrage, and immigration reform. Naomi chose to present about what happened to her. Discrimination doesn't just happen in history, she told her classmates, many of whom had watched her story unfold in real time. It happens at airport gates and retail stores and sometimes even in schools. And the only way it stops is if we refuse to stay silent about it. She showed data, the complaints that had been buried, the policy changes implemented after her story went viral, the measurable decrease in discrimination reports at American Airlines following the zero-tolerance enforcement. But she also showed the limits of individual justice. How Sharon Whitfield was gone, but the mindset that created Sharon Whitfield persisted. How her father's power had protected her, but most kids didn't have that protection. So what do? She concluded. We use our voices. We support each other. We refuse to be bystanders when we see injustice. Because change doesn't come from one CEO firing one racist employee. It comes from all of us deciding that discrimination is unacceptable and proving it with our actions every single day. Her classmates gave her a standing ovation. Several were crying. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, told the class that Naomi's presentation would be submitted to the state's social studies competition. But more importantly, 3 students approached Naomi after class to share their own experiences with discrimination, experiences they'd been too afraid to voice until they saw someone else speak first. That's how movements grow. One voice becomes 2, becoming 10, becoming hundreds, until silence is no longer an option and change becomes inevitable. David Williams continued his work transforming American Airlines culture, knowing the work would never truly be finished. But he also knew that his daughter had learned something essential, that your trauma doesn't have to define you, but how you respond to it will. Naomi wasn't just the girl whose passport got thrown away anymore. She was the girl who turned that moment into a movement. She refused to let hatred silence her. Who proved that even at 11 years old, you could stand up to injustice and win. And that lesson, that power of voice, that refusal to accept discrimination as inevitable, that courage to speak truth even when it hurts, that was something no Sharon Whitfield could ever take away. Now it's your turn to reflect. Do you think racial discrimination and prejudice can truly end, or will they always exist in some form, lurking in the shadows? What do you believe needs to happen, in airports, schools, workplaces, everywhere, to curb this poison that's infected our society for generations? Do you think serving justice to individual racists like Sharon Whitfield is enough, or does the entire system need to be torn down and rebuilt from scratch? Share your honest thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation cannot end with just one story. And here's what I really want to know. What would you have done in Naomi's shoes? Would you have had the courage to speak up, to go public, to risk being judged and criticized just to tell your truth? Or what about as a bystander at Gate 42? Would you have intervened, or would you have been one of the people recording but staying silent? Tell us, because understanding our own responses to injustice is the first step to changing them. If you want racism to become a thing of the past in our country and world at large, if you want to be like Naomi and David Williams, using your voice, demanding accountability, refusing to let discrimination hide in corporate policies and polite silence, then share this video with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe to this channel. Together, we can amplify these stories. Together, we can hold people and systems accountable. Together, we can create a world where 11-year-old girls can travel to math competitions without being treated like criminals. Hit that like button if you stand for equality and human dignity. Drop your own experiences in the comments. When have you witnessed discrimination, and what did you do about it? And most importantly, what will you do the next time you're faced with injustice? Thank you for watching Naomi's story. Thank you for caring enough to make it to the end. And thank you for being part of the solution, because change starts with people like you deciding that enough is enough. Subscribe to stay connected, and let's keep fighting until every child, regardless of race, regardless of whose daughter they are, can pursue their dreams without fear. See you in the next story.